Welcome to the Real Estate Majlis podcast, where we dive into the latest real estate insights and trends. Whether you are a seasoned investor or a first-time buyer, our podcast is here to provide valuable information and expert advice. This episode is powered by Bayut, the UAE's leading property platform and proud member of the Dubizo Group. Whether you're buying, selling, or renting, Bayut connects you with real estate solutions tailored to your needs using innovative tools like TrueCheck, TrueEstimate, TrueBroker, and Bayut GPT. From finding your next home to advertising your listings with confidence, Bayut offers real photos, real prices, and real properties, helping you make informed decisions in the market.
Paul, thank you so much for joining us today. We have Paul Poots, who is the head of sector developments at VARA.
Ooh.
A lot of people recently were talking about tokenization and VARA. So can you tell us more about first, what is VARA?
Now, VARA stands for the Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority. So VARA is the regulator for virtual assets in Dubai. Virtual assets, or, a lot of people talk about kind of cryptocurrencies, but it's a lot more than that. Virtual assets are anything like products that also get issued on a blockchain. So tokens is also a virtual asset, right? It's not necessarily a currency that's traded online, but it is a product that gets listed on a blockchain, and that comes under the virtual asset definition as well.
And if I'm not mistaken, VARA of Dubai is the first of its kind globally.
Yes.
As a regulator.
VARA is the first and only regulator globally that is specifically set up to service this industry. Which is quite unique because around the world, normal, like traditional financial regulators also regulate the virtual asset industry. Dubai went a different route. And why that happened is actually VARA was established during COVID.
Okay.
When the COVID epidemic hit, Dubai and the Dubai Economy and Tourism Department started to look at, okay, well, three of our biggest industries are in big trouble. Tourism, trade, and events. In those days, we didn't know what was going to happen with it. We didn't know whether it was going to come back. We didn't know how it was going to go. So we started to think about, okay, well, how can Dubai continue to still play a global role? How can we continue to grow the GDP? How can we continue to contribute to the D33 agenda, which we all work towards? And the virtual asset industry and the digital economy was one of these that really was identified as potential, for growth that would withstand these kind of situations. And then you go, okay, well, if we want to target that industry, if we want to attract that industry, how do we do it in a responsible way? What do we need to do so that it doesn't become something that's a problem later on? How do we set it up from day one in the right situation? So the idea of a regulator came up because it is a financial product. It is something where investors from around the world will be onboarded. So we started to look at a regulator and what would that look like? And then you go and look around the world and you say, okay, well, how is this industry regulated? What's being done for it? How can we take something maybe that already exists and make it better, make it fit for Dubai? But actually, there was not much out there in those days. A lot of countries were still saying, this industry, we don't want to look at it, or we forbid it for people to come in. And then we said, okay, well, how do we do now a proactive approach? How do we open this up in a responsible way? And that's why we said, well, if nobody else is doing it, then we will do it ourselves. And we start from scratch, which is not always easy. Yeah. But it is very much something that, we never say that it's not possible. We just find a way to do it, and that's what we did.
And ironically, actually, when VARA came in, RERA itself, Real Estate Regulatory Agency of Dubai, was first of its kind in real estate regulation.
Right.
And VARA, first of its kind in digital regulation.
Yes.
And we were lucky to work together on real estate tokenization, which is VARA and RERA and DLD.
From long-term standing, how do you see this translating to the consumer and in terms of business? Are we going to start to see, for example, the Form Fs, the MOUs on the blockchain?
VARA's role is very much around kind of making sure that it grows responsibly, that we protect investors, that we also make sure that the right disclosures are put in and so on. So if you look at the future, our first priority was actually, if we go back a little bit, there were already over 1,000 companies in Dubai operating in this industry.
Right.
Now, those companies were in different buckets. Some of them were people doing it with their own money. So if you're not attracting other investors, you don't have to be regulated.
Right.
Some companies were doing illegal activities, and as a regulator, we have to shut those down as well. And then the third bucket was really the companies that were operating in a licensed activity. And the way that our regulation was set up was looking, and that's very unique as well, is we look at the activity that people do rather than the products that they do.
Right.
And that allows us, to your point of what the future holds, to be adaptable to anything that comes.
Right.
We don't say you can, as an exchange, you can trade Bitcoin but not Ethereum, to give two examples.
Right.
We say if you're an exchange, we will license you as an exchange. We make sure your processes are in order. We make sure your AML is in order. We make sure, all these kind of compliance issues are there. But we don't tell you what you can and cannot trade on your exchange. So if we then look at the future, and actually the example of tokenization is a great one.
Yeah.
When we wrote our initial regulations, this concept of tokenization, as it stands today, the real-world asset tokenization was not being worked on by the industry the way that it is now.
True.
So we have to adjust, we have to move forward with the industry, and we were able to do that very quickly. Some of the trends that we're seeing is very much around the real-world asset tokenization, and the real estate one is a great example of that, and there's many others. Some of the other elements that are coming in, is around kind of DeFi and indeed, like contracts that are being put online, all these kind of things. For us, we're ready to deal with them. And even if we're not, we have a very good concept around regulatory pilots where if a new technology emerges, if a new concept emerges, rather than us saying you can't do it, we work with our regulated entities to go, how can you do it? How can we test it with guardrails? So it may not open up to everything, and then you may not be able to do everything at once, but we will put guardrails in place that allows us, not in a sandbox, kind of theoretical testing, real-world testing, identifying what's going to happen with it so that we can then build our regulations around it.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
Great. From customers' point of view, and before jumping to real estate tokenization, we see a lot of crypto and digital assets websites and trading exchanges and so on and so forth. A lot of people are worried about dealing with such entities. So as a regulator, what's the best advice for customers and investors when they deal with such entities? What homework they should do?
And that's a very important question. And that's very much something that, we work on with a lot of other entities. But you as a consumer should only be dealing with regulated entities. If it's an important thing when you want to invest in this kind of a product, you want to make sure that your money is protected. You want to make sure the entities you work with follow the rules and don't get shut down because they are not, and so on. So the best way I can put it is VARA has a very informative website that explains to you not just the process and our regulations, but also explains to you which are the entities that are licensed. So since we've been established, we now have over 30 entities that are fully licensed by VARA. They're all published on our website. And as a consumer and as a person looking to invest or deal with virtual assets in Dubai, that's your first stop when you want to do research. Those are the companies that have gone through the licensing process, that have the right checks and balances in place, so that you can deal with them as a consumer.
Before we jump to the developers, if we start to define what is real estate tokenization, and then what is the benefit for developers, brokers, all the different stakeholders, if you allow me, Cecilia?
Please do.
So and indeed, maybe we talk first about what the real estate tokenization story is about. And tokenization of real estate allows you to cut up a particular property, the ownership of that, into multiple parts, to fractionalize it. Fractionalization is not new.
Yes.
It's been done for many years already. But the way that it's been done is by, traditionally, you create a holding company. That company buys a property, and the investors buy shares in the company.
That's the crowdfunding, right?
And that's the crowdfunding model. And that's well established, and that works very well.
Yeah.
But it has drawbacks around costs, because for every property you need a new company.
Correct.
If you, as investors, want to sell your shares to another investor, there's processes around that cost money, that cost time. Tokenization and blockchain allows you to cut a lot of these inefficiencies out.
Correct.
So the unique thing that we've done, and the project that we've worked on with the land department, is for the first time ever globally, a land department registry has been able to, on the blockchain, issue a title deed.
Yeah, which is
no
incredible.
need for an SPV to be set up that effectively holds that one title deed.
Yeah.
It is now the government entity that's responsible for registering the ownership of properties and land that can issue that ownership document on the blockchain. And step 2 can then fractionalize that so that you can now have multiple people owning and being directly registered in the government registry as being the owners, which is a unique value proposition. Now, once you do that, the technology allows you to then transfer that ownership much quicker without all the hassle, without all sorts of other parties involved. So therefore, your costs are lower to do that. The time to market is lower, and you know, and therefore you can create more liquidity.
Right.
You can also make sure that people don't have to buy large chunks of real estate at once. You open it up to a whole new audience who may not have as much funding available, but still want to get the returns of investing in real estate.
Yes.
And that's really the unique thing that has happened here, which has made global news. So
Yeah. So the pilot project that the Land Department works with VARA and the Future Foundation on
Yes.
is a unique one. And if you still remember the date, 25 of May,
Yes.
that's the date that the first tokenized property in Dubai was sold.
it was very important to make sure that, you know, as part of this pilot, we were ready that any party involved in it needed to be a licensed entity, right? As I mentioned earlier, as a consumer, if you want to invest in these kind of virtual assets, you need to make sure that you're dealing with entities that are fully regulated. We went through the process with the parties involved to make sure that they were fully regulated. And that's a long process, and that's a very detailed process. But the entities went through that process successfully, and we all had a deadline to work towards because we wanted to make sure that we aligned all the parties so that, you know, in a responsible way, but that we could deliver this on time within the right parameters. So yes, our team was still on a Saturday late at night working to get the letters issued so that the moment that we went live, all the parties that needed to get fully licensed were fully licensed, and you know, all of the due diligence was done.
Who can sell tokenized real estate in Dubai? We see a lot of people claiming that they are tokenizing real estate. So what kind of license activity allows certain company to do tokenization?
And to add to that, and I was thinking while you're explaining, I think could be a little bit of a confusion here because, as you said, I can go and set up a business in a free zone with a certain activity that could borderline suggest I cannot do. So I think this could bring a little bit of confusion to the consumers.
Yeah, and that's also a role of a regulator is to monitor what's happening because we have marketing guidelines and rules that whether you're licensed or not, you have to follow.
Yes.
So, you know, we have a team that actually monitors kind of, you know, the announcements that are being made. And then if there's companies making announcements around activities that should be licensed activities, but they are not licensed, we actually write to them and we ask them to take it down and all these kind of, right? So that's kind of our normal course of business. We do that for everything. Right now, in our pilot, there's only 2 parties that we've worked with, which were selected. And so there's one platform which is licensed by us as a broker-dealer.
Right.
Because they are connecting investors with product.
Yes.
And then there's another party that has been licensed as an issuer. Because both of those are separate activities that I talked about earlier. So the issuance is really, you know, around kind of on-chain creating that token.
Right.
But then just creating the token doesn't mean you can then distribute it.
Right.
And that's what you need the platform for.
Yes.
So the platform that has been licensed and it's well documented and they are advertising on this, they have gone through the entire licensing process to become a broker-dealer. And that's what's going to happen now in the future. So any other entities that are looking to do this need to be fully licensed by us. And depending on what they want to do, right? You can be on 2 sides of the medal. You could say, and you could imagine, for instance, developers going, actually, we don't necessarily want to have the investment platform to onboard investors and to, you know, bring them in for this. But we may want to take our properties and our developments and tokenize them. So they may become an issuer. And then they work with an existing broker-dealer to put those tokens that they have issued on their properties into the market. Or they may decide, actually, you know what, like our expertise lies in bringing the investors in and we have that network, so we want to build a platform ourselves. Both of those activities can be done by one party or can be done by separate parties, but they are both licensed activities from a VARA point of view.
How many tokens can you issue, for example, in one property, Mahmoud?
The first one, I think we issued 1.3 million tokens.
Wow.
And the second one, each token, I think, was around 1.85 dirham. So there is a calculation looking at the
There's a
area of the
ratio, right?
property. Then we times it by 10,000, and that gives you the number of tokens. Initially in the pilot, we said the minimum investment is 2,000 dirham, and that translates into maybe 1,000 token or less.
There's two things running in my head now. One is obviously a lot of people getting exit from the market, let's call it, because of price per square foot or square meter going up. Maybe they cannot afford a full holy property anymore. So this is a option to enter a asset class with a very small amount of money. But does that mean that people are going to start to be trading this as stock, expecting growth? And how do you exit as well? Like lots of questions around this topic.
And a lot of that is around disclosures that need to be done by the platforms, right? Because it is still a real estate investment. It is not a speculative meme coin or other things that we see in our industry, for instance, right? And it's never intended to be that. Part of this pilot, actually, some of the elements that we are testing or will be testing, because the pilot is continuing to run, and just, this first part was around testing kind of the technology and the initial principles. The next phases are going to be testing secondary market. How do you trade out of your position? Or how do you buy additional units if you haven't bought them in the first part? And within that, we are working on what are the limitations that we need to do so that it doesn't become a speculative market, or also so that you cannot manipulate the market either. Because you can imagine if certain properties in a building are tokenized and trading on a platform, but others are not, you could start to trade very low on a platform to drive a price down and then suddenly buy it. So there's lots of elements that we're testing now to make sure that manipulation is not there, speculation is not there. Of course, investors will still make their own decisions with regards to why they are going into this.
Yes.
And a lot of it is going to be around, the yield that this token will get them, but also, of course, capital appreciation.
Yes.
We are not going to be necessarily prescriptive on the rules or the conditions that are set on these tokens, because as I mentioned, we're looking at the activity, but we will review it to ensure that investors continue to be protected.
Right.
The land department may even set some rules on that. And this is where we work very closely together to make sure that we don't get a situation that runs out of hand.
So to translate that, to make sure I got it right. So in an ideal world, on an elevator pitch, we should tell investors to say, if you take a call into this new, let's call it asset class, take a long-term view, buy with the view of waiting the property to be ready, to get a little bit of capital appreciation, put it on the rental pool, and use that income as your ROI on the money that you invested. That should be the ideal scenario,
Exactly.
right?
And this is what we expect. And back to Paul's point on what DLD is doing to protect investors, we also make sure that the value of token is correlated with the value of the property. At the end of the day, there is a physical asset, which is the real estate trading. So we don't want this tokens to be trading in a different kind of atmosphere in terms of much higher than the actual value. And even when the property goes into the platform, we make sure it's fairly valued. And we've seen in other contexts where properties which goes into crowdfunding and other platforms, sometimes it's more expensive than the market value. We make sure, it goes into market value. So investors will benefit. But again, what you said is what we call for, which is long-term view. And also in phase 2, not only secondary trading, maybe we'll look into the off-plan. But currently we're not dealing with off-plan. But off-plan can be a game changer.
Yeah. But again, we need to do that step by step. Because it's so new, we need to make sure that on both sides, we can continue to kind of monitor what happens. And that's why we started small. And, maybe to part of the discussion we had earlier, there have been a lot of announcements of companies going, and we can do tokenization. And technically, to tokenize something, the technology behind it is available readily. To do it in a legal way that is fully authorized by the regulators, this is why I'm saying, people need to look on our website to make sure that these people are fully licensed to do so before they part with their money on these investment platforms.
And reflecting on the first and second tokenized property, maybe, and this is something maybe we're talking about, what kind of investors will invest in the new tokenized property? So from the first and second property, we found that 70% of investors are first-time investors in Dubai real estate market, although they are residents of the UAE. So that shows that this product is maybe fits more people who were left behind, who could not jump into the real estate market.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And we feel like we need to protect them more because we know this is their first time into the real estate market.
In the end, this is also a platform that is direct to consumer, right?
Yeah.
So what happens to the brokers? Because you also have a situation where a developer a few days ago announced that they are setting up a direct from consumer resale platform, so you don't have to use a broker. So with all the tech coming in, do you think the middleman is getting pushed to the side, or we're going to start to have some commission schemes for selling? A lot of questions. You know?
This question actually I was asked yesterday in an Arabic news radio. So brokers will always be there.
Yes.
And we don't have, as a Dubai Land Department, any intention to bypass them or exclude them. What we say is that brokers can bring fair value or great properties to the platforms, and they will be compensated commission exactly the same way. This should be win-win for developers, brokers,
everyone
investors,
in the chain, yeah.
and the whole chain of the industry. I don't know if Paul agrees on this.
Yeah, look, I can see also a way where indeed brokers start to partner with some of the platforms to bring both sides, either to bring investors or to bring properties onto the platforms.
Yes.
I think what we're trying to solve for is really, the high cost of transferring the ownership of these properties and the high entry point that investors currently have to get into it. And if you think of those 2 points, but then as a broker, you have a network of investors, you have a network of properties that potentially can... As brokers, they might actually be able to benefit from that, also to your point.
Yeah.
Look, this is so amazing. I think is one of those where it shows how the UAE is at the forefront of everything in the world. So congratulations, Mahmoud and Paul, for this initiative.
It's Paul, not me.
No.
Congratulations. Thank you, Paul, for being our podcast. I think this was super, super interesting. And I hope to see you soon for more updates.
For sure. Thanks for having me. It's really great.
Thank you.
Thank you.